Civilization teeters on the brink because the global average temperature rise is accompanied by a temperature rise at least twice as high in the interior of large continents where the grains are grown. So a 2 degrees Celsius global average temperature rise means at least 4 degrees Celsius in the interior of the large continents where grains are grown. And it's difficult for me to imagine we will be able to grow grains at scale at that kind of temperature rise. So that means civilization ceases to exist, since this civilization, like all others, is based on grains, and somewhere around 2 degrees Celsius above the 1750 baseline.
And we're almost there now.
Exactly. We're almost there, and civilization is a heat engine. Already, at least 5 million people die every year because of climate change. Already are running out of habitat, as most frequently manifest in a shortage of food.
Saving whatever they can, farmers in northern Peru are picking their crops ahead of their time for harvest. Wilmer Peña says little is left from his 22 acres of rice.
Look, this is just straw. There's no rice here. There's not much work. We can't sustain our families. Because of the drought, my daughter had to leave the university. Now we only have debts left.
Here in Piura, more than 200,000 hectares of fruit and vegetables are damaged. Farmers have lost 80% of their crops. Governor Reinaldo Gilbeck says people's lives are directly affected.
The situation is critical for the agriculture. 40% of the workforce depends on the land. It's a direct hit on the people's economy because the state won't be able to cover their losses. There will be debts, hunger, and unemployment.
Already people don't have access to potable water.
Regina Mendoza has been waiting for more than 3 hours under the scorching sun for the water trucks.
We're waiting for the water truck to leave us water. They only give us 4 containers, and that's not enough for our children.
Forecasters say the rains are already delayed by 2 months in much of the country. Farmers here say even if it rains, the harvest is already lost. Mariana Sanchez, Al Jazeera, Piura, Peru.
Floods. Tornadoes. In 2016, talking about the weather was often more than just polite conversation. All the while, the country was in the grip of a drought, the worst in decades.
In my lifetime, I'm only aware of 2 tornadoes that have ever happened in this area, and they're both in the recent past. So we're moving to a situation where the climate is so angry that we're going to start seeing things like tornadoes, which you normally don't get in South Africa.
Our droughts, normal in an arid region, are becoming more and more intense.
What most people do not realize is just how close we've come to catastrophic failure. We've literally dodged the bullet. Gauteng was down to about a week's supply of water at one point in time, and then the Gauteng economy shuts down. You're talking 60% of the national economy.
It's estimated that across Africa, this drought may have left as many as 36 million people without food.
And with that humanitarian disaster, economic fallout.
I think the economic effect of the weather patterns has been underestimated. If you look at the direct effects, the most immediate evidence of it is provided by agricultural output, which has roughly halved over the last 18 months.
Already we have climate change refugees in Northern Africa, in the Middle East. So I'd say humans are already being impacted quite severely in some locations around the globe. Many places on the planet, because of our location, have not been severely impacted yet. And the key word there is yet.
We are about 490 parts per million carbon dioxide equivalent today. Not 400, it's 490. And that's counting methane, that's coming NTO, that's all the greenhouse gases. The longest, biggest serious thing remains carbon dioxide because it stays up there for many thousands of years. So the likelihood of going over 500 is unfortunately almost a certainty. there's a reasonably high probability of going over 600. And so it's very, very scary, because if you look at what we're doing now and the rate we're putting up now, I don't see. And the rate of where countries are moving and how seriously they take it and the long time scale it takes to make this is very, very hard to see us stopping at 550.
I think we're headed for at least an 8.7 degrees Celsius global average temperature rise within the next decade. Just take, for example, an ice-free Arctic and the methane burst that would almost certainly result from that, and the subsequent collapse of civilization, which is an omnicidal heat engine all by itself. And that takes us to 6 degrees Celsius in as little as 18 months from now.
Acceleration is continuing with the feedback loops. I've seen you mention moisturization of the upper troposphere, which is water vapor. What's your comment?
For a long time, we've known that water vapor was the single most abundant greenhouse gas in the atmosphere, comprising more than 90% by volume of greenhouse gases in the atmosphere. And we also know that the equilibrium between that water vapor in the troposphere and global average temperature is achieved in a matter of days. For every 1 degree temperature rise associated with burning carbon, such as coal and oil, there's a 1 degree temperature rise associated that results from this self-reinforcing feedback loop, moistening the upper troposphere. And that's a very, very rapid feedback. Again, equilibrium is reached within a matter of days, not weeks, not months, days. 1 degree, we get a similar increase in temperature as a result of moistening the upper troposphere. I'm not making a prediction here, but I'm going to relay a couple of predictions. According to Natalia Shakova and colleagues, reporting at the 2008 European Geophysical Union meetings, they concluded that a 50 gigaton burst of methane from the Arctic Ocean was highly possible at any time. They also indicated that such an abrupt release of methane from the Arctic Ocean would lead very rapidly to a 1.3 degrees Celsius global average temperature rise. If we get the ice-free Arctic predicted by the U.S. Naval Postgraduate College, so if that occurs next year, it looks like we dodged a bullet. It didn't happen in 2016. If that occurs next year, which seems quite likely, then I don't see any way to avoid the release of that 50 gigaton burst of methane in the very near future. That takes us to about 3 degrees Celsius above the 1750 baseline. Now we're at 6 degrees Celsius 18 months from now. I don't see how humans survive that because of lack of habitat, that is. It could be based on those two predictions and the linking together of those two predictions, along with the absence of global dimming. It could be that we don't have 18 months with habitat for our favorite species on Earth. These kinds of events are leading to a very near-term catastrophic outcome for humans and basically all complex life on planet.
To check out the likelihood of the two key near-term events happening, first, ice-free Arctic in summer, or methane release from permafrost in the Arctic seafloor, I went to the top. Professor Peter Wadhams, Professor of Polar Ice at Cambridge for more than 20 years, and currently Professor Emeritus at Cambridge. Hello, Professor. Professor Peter Wadhams, welcome, and very pleased to see you. Some have called for an ice-free Arctic sea in summer as early as next year, 2018, and some could say possibly could happen as early as this Arctic summer 2017. So what's your view on that?
Well, yes, the trend of ice area in summer has been downwards for a long time, ever since we started to be able to detect the area of sea ice with satellites. The area's been going down, and the rate of decline has accelerated. Also, since we've been able to measure thickness from submarines, the thickness has gone down even faster, so that the stage is kind of set for a collapse, because the decrease in area is you're dealing with ice which is getting thinner and thinner every year. So there'll come a point where it might all collapse from below rather than collapsing from the outside in, and that may be what's happening just these last couple of months, because a decline in thickness and area together leads you to a smaller and smaller area in the summer. And so the normal predictions, including my own, are that the first thing we'll see in the way of an extreme result is that in September, the month of minimum ice area, will get an ice-free period in the Arctic, just like we have more or less in the Antarctic. But what's happened this year has been a bit unexpected in that we went right down to a low area in summer. That's as predicted. It wasn't the lowest ever, but it was very nearly the lowest ever. But then the ice has recovered. We're now into December, and the area that it should have grown to, it's far below that. The anomaly in area for November and December is far greater than any of the anomalies in any other months, including the summer months. So something's happened to the Arctic. It's not winter hasn't happened to it yet. It's not growing back. So if it doesn't grow back properly this winter and leaves us with a much lower area by the end of the growth season in April and May, then the retreat in summer will give us a completely ice-free Arctic next year.
I like your point because it's not just the extent, where a lot of the charts look at the extent, but a lot of your work has been looking at the thickness of ice. And effectively, we've got an exponential trend, haven't we, rather than a linear trend. So it's like your analogy in your book, Farewell to Ice, where you've used the glass tumbler, and the ice is keeping it cool until the last of the ice melts. But also you can look at the surface and it looks quite a lot of ice in the glass, but actually the volume of the ice cubes is quite thin. And I think that's where we are. So it does seem that we're only 1 or 2 years at the most away from an ice-free Arctic in summer.
Yes, that's a good analogy you make there, that you can have a steady decline because of warming in some parameter, and it's not just Arctic ice, but a lot of other things in the world, that warming will cause things to decline, but it's a decline that goes on until some end is achieved. And the trouble is with ice is that the end is achieved much more quickly because of the combination of area and thickness change. And then the result of that is a complete change in everything. It's essentially a kind of tipping point. In summer, so long as there's any ice there at all, which always was, then that keeps the water temperature down to zero, because if the solar radiation tries to warm the water just melts more ice. So it is a perfect air conditioning system. The water is kept at zero. The air above it is kept at zero by the fact that the air is blowing over a 0 degree surface. As soon as that ice goes, however thin it is, if it's there, it has this effect. If it goes, suddenly we're not in the Arctic anymore. We're in a normal ocean, which means the water can warm up. That means it's melting the seabed and allowing methane to be released. And the warmer water then causes increased melt of the remaining ice, because you're putting heat into the ice from the water, which wasn't there before. So just the loss of the ice gives you that sudden boost to warming.
Yes, and I think, so the next point I think is that once the summer ice is gone, it's not going to come back easily at all, is it?
No. When it goes, there'll be a big jump in terms of the amount of heat in the Arctic Ocean because of all that extra absorption of radiation in summer, and it just won't come back. It will certainly stay. You'll get some freezing in the subsequent winter, but it won't be nearly as much, and so it'll become ice-free again the following summer, and then the ice-free period will grow, and the number of months that it's ice-free will increase to 2, 3, 4, 5 months perhaps.
So there is definitely a fairly dire trend happening there. And you did touch on methane, which is in the permafrost on the base of the sea in the Arctic Sea, particularly on the shallow areas of the Siberian shelf there. think it's a high probability then that once there is an ice-free summer at least, that there, within the next few years, we could get a significant release of methane?
Yes, I think that could happen very soon, in fact, because already the shallow shelves around the Arctic, the very wide shelves north of Siberia, are already ice-free in summer. So this air conditioning effect is already happening, or the lack of it. So we're already getting warming of the water in the coastal seas around the Arctic, even though it doesn't extend into the central Arctic Ocean. And those coastal seas are covering these very large methane deposits in the sediments, which are only held down by the fact that the permafrost left over from the last ice age extends offshore. But that permafrost is now melting because of the heat being received from the ice-free water. That's an entirely new effect, because it's only started to happen since we had open water in the Arctic summer, which is only the last decade or so. And each year there's a Russian group which goes out and looks for methane plumes and finds more and more every summer. They just came back from a voyage this October and found more than ever before. Each time they go, there's more and more methane being released. So that at the moment is it's having some climatic effect. But if you had a sudden cooperative pulse of methane coming out from the complete melt of this offshore permafrost, that would have a big climatic effect, and very rapidly as well.
Methane is much more potent in the short term, isn't it, than carbon dioxide?
Yes.
And it is a significant amount that could be released.
Yes, it's over 20 times as powerful per molecule, and it has an immediate effect because it has its climatic effect, but then after it's been in the atmosphere for about a decade, it oxidizes to carbon dioxide. So the methane pulse gives you a really huge boost to warming, acting for a short period, and that is just what we don't need at the moment on the Earth. But then if the methane pulse then stops, you'll just go back to the previous trend in warming. Everything is exponential, and this is the frightening thing. I think James Hansen, who's very highly respected scientist, said, well, one of the things we have to really fear in climate change is that it's all exponential because of feedbacks. Everything's accelerating, and that means that you can see things changing very slowly and you don't do anything about them because you think they're going to keep happening slowly. Then suddenly they start happening fast, and you're left with not doing anything about them and having to suffer the consequences.
Thank you so much, Professor Peter Wadhams, and we look forward to catching up soon. As a species, we clearly need to take urgent, massive, coordinated action to prevent the demise of our species. As a species, we have made 5 major blunders, mainly through self-interest and greed. The first is exponential population growth. This is the root cause of all our problems. Even a school child can see that this is a problem about to manifest. It took us 10,000 years to get to 1 billion people, only 120 years to get to 2 billion, and within 100 years we have not only doubled again, but quadrupled. Think about this for a moment. Our second major blunder was not controlling carbon emissions. As population growth has become exponential, so have carbon emissions. 3. Unchecked carbon emissions have led to continued global warming. 4. Unchecked global warming has now reached a critical level of melting the Arctic ice. This is the global air conditioner. It is not made of metal nor plastic, it is made of ice, which is melting away never to return. 5. The ice melt has accelerated self-reinforcing exponential feedback loops of further rapid global change, causing loss of albedo effect, release of potent methane. What are we going to do about it? Politicians will do nothing until there are riots in the street about it. It would be political suicide for them because we are the problem. Millennials, what are you going to do about it? It is your future that has been robbed. I don't see any of you protesting in the streets or parking your cars on freeways. You must be getting too many benefits from this short-term lifestyle. I'll leave you to watch and think about it as our lifeblood drips away.